The horse collapsed before the girl did. Asterisk, its knees buckled without warning, sinking into the frozen dirt as if the earth itself had finally decided to claim it. Steam rushed from its nostrils, sharp and white against the gray dawn, then faded into the wind. The girl slid from the saddle a heartbeat later, hitting the ground hard. Her breath left her in a broken gasp. One arm wrapped instinctively around her swollen belly, the other clawed at the dirt. Fingers trembling as if the ground might disappear beneath her. Asterisk for a moment. Nothing moved. Asterisk, the wind swept across the open land, carrying dust, dry grass, and the distant cry of something wild. The horse lay still, eyes dull, chest barely rising. The girl tried to push herself up. Her body refused. Hunger, cold, and fear had hollowed her out long before this morning. Asterisk. She rolled onto her back and stared at the sky, pale, endless, uncaring. Asterisk. This was how people vanished out here. Not with screams or gunfire, but quietly. A body swallowed by distance. A story erased by wind. Asterisk. Far away, beyond the low ridge of cracked stone and dead brush, a ranch fence cut across the land like a scar. Weathered posts leaned at odd angles, wire singing softly as the wind passed through it. Smoke rose from a lone chimney, thin and steady, the only sign of warmth for miles. The girl saw it through half-lidded eyes. She tried to lift her arm. It fell back to the ground. Asterisk. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Elias Crow had learned to read the land the way other men read faces. That morning, as he stood on his porch with a tin cup warming his hands, something felt wrong. The wind had shifted overnight, carrying with it a tension he hadn't felt in years. His old hound, Briggs, stood frozen at his feet, ears lifted. Tail stiff, Elias followed the dog's gaze toward the eastern flats. Nothing should have been there. Nothing ever was. He set the cup down slowly. Elias was a big man once. Broad shoulders, steady hands, the kind built for work and endurance. Time had carved him down instead of breaking him outright. His beard was threaded with gray now, his face lined deep by sun and silence. The war had taken something from him, though no bullet had ever touched his skin. It had left him hollow, cautious, and deeply alone. He had chosen this place because it was empty, no neighbors close enough to ask questions, no townsfolk whispering about what he'd lost. Just land, animals, and the routine of survival. Days measured by fences mended and cattle counted. Nights filled with wind and memory. Asterisk. Elias stepped off the porch, rifle resting against his shoulder more from habit than intention. Briggs trotted ahead low to the ground, nose working the air. They crested the ridge slowly. That was when Elias saw the horse, Asterisk, dead or close to it. And beside it, something smaller, human. He broke into a run without thinking. The girl lay half-curled in the dirt, her dress torn at the hem, boots worn thin. Her face was pale beneath a layer of dust, lips cracked, eyes unfocused. One hand rested protectively on her belly, unmistakably swollen beneath the fabric. Asterisk. Elias stopped short, breath catching in his chest. Pregnant, out here, alone, he knelt, careful, as if sudden movement might shatter her. He touched 2 fingers to her neck. A pulse fluttered weakly beneath his skin. Asterisk. Hey, he said softly, the word unfamiliar in his mouth. You hear me? Asterisk. Her eyelids flickered. She tried to speak again. This time, a sound came out barely more than air. Asterisk. Please. That was all. Elias looked around, scanning the horizon. No riders, no tracks fresh enough to suggest company. Just the long, open stretch of land and the sound of wind through dry grass. Asterisk. He shrugged out of his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. She flinched at the contact, fear flashing across her face before exhaustion swallowed it whole. Asterisk. It's all right, he murmured, though he wasn't sure who he was trying to convince. You're safe. I got you. Asterisk. He lifted her carefully, surprised by how light she felt. A woman carrying life should not weigh this little. Her head fell against his chest, her breath shallow and uneven. Briggs waned softly. Elias carried her back toward the ranch, every step heavy with questions he didn't want to ask yet. Asterisk. The house had not held. Another human presence in a long time. Elias laid her on the narrow bed near the stove, stoked the fire higher, and brought water to her lips. She drank in small, desperate sips, hands shaking. He fed her broth slowly, watching color return to her cheeks inch by inch. She slept for hours. Outside, the day dragged itself forward. Elias buried the horse. He fixed nothing. He checked on the cattle, but barely saw them. His thoughts stayed tethered to the woman breathing softly in his bed. When she finally woke, dusk had settled in. Firelight danced across the walls, turning shadows into memories. She pushed herself upright with effort, eyes darting around the room until they landed on him. Fear tightened her features. Elias stayed where he was, seated on a chair near the door, hands open and visible. You're on my ranch, he said quietly. You collapsed out east. I brought you in. She studied his face as if searching for something, cruelty, maybe, or expectation. Whatever she looked for, she didn't seem to find it. Her shoulders sagged. My baby? She asked, voice barely steady. Alive, Elias said. Strong enough to fight this far, I'd say. Tears filled her eyes. She pressed both hands to her belly and bowed her head, breath hitching as relief poured out of her. Silence settled between them. After a long moment, she spoke again. My name is Mara, Elias. She nodded, absorbing it. Then, almost as if the words had been waiting, she said, my mother left me. The sentence landed hard in the quiet room. Elias didn't interrupt. She said she couldn't carry the shame anymore. Mara continued. Said I made my choice. Said the child wasn't her burden. Her fingers curled into the blanket. She gave me a horse and pointed east. That was all? No anger colored her voice. Just exhaustion. A kind of numb disbelief. Elias looked into the fire. He knew something about being discarded by the people meant to protect you. You can stay here, he said finally. As long as you need. Mara looked up sharply. Why? The question cut deeper than she knew. Elias swallowed. Because no one should be left to die out there. She held his gaze, eyes searching again. This time something else flickered there. Hope, fragile and dangerous. Thank you, she whispered. That night. Elias slept on the floor by the door. Not because he didn't trust her, but because he didn't trust himself to hope. Days passed slowly. Stitched together by quiet routines, Mara regained strength. She helped when she could, folding cloth, sweeping the floor, tending the small garden near the house. Elias showed her where the water pump was, how to avoid the loose board on the porch. They spoke little, but the silence between them softened. At night. Mara sometimes cried in her sleep. Elias would sit by the stove, staring into the embers, listening, feeling the ache of old losses stir awake inside him. The land, however, did not care for healing. One afternoon, Briggs began barking at the fence line. Elias followed the sound and found tracks in the dirt, fresh, booted, more than one. Men had been through recently. He stood there a long time, the wind tugging at his coat, unease settling deep in his bones. Whatever had driven Mara into the wilderness had not stayed behind, and the storm, he knew, was only beginning. The storm arrived without thunder. It came as a low wall of gray rolling over the flats, swallowing the horizon inch by inch. The wind changed, first colder, sharper, carrying grit that stung the eyes and cut the skin. Elias felt it before he saw it, a pressure in his chest that had nothing to do with weather. Briggs paced the yard, whining, circling back toward the house again and again. Mara stood in the doorway, one hand braced against the frame, the other resting on her belly. Her strength had returned enough to move, but not enough to hide the fear that rose in her eyes when she followed Elias's gaze toward the open land. We should bring the animals in, Elias said. They worked in silence. Cattle pushed against the corral, uneasy, hooves striking dirt hard. The sky darkened unnaturally fast. the kind of dim that made afternoon feel like dusk. By the time the last gate was secured, snow had begun to fall dry. Stinging flakes driven sideways by the wind, inside the house, the fire roared. Elias barred the door and checked the windows. Old habits resurfaced without asking permission. Mara watched him from the table. "You've seen this before," she said quietly. "Storms?" He replied. She shook her head. "Trouble." Elias didn't answer. Night closed in early. The wind battered the walls, forcing its way through every crack, every weakness. The house groaned but held. Mara sat wrapped in blankets, her breathing uneven. Pain flickered across her face now and then, not enough to bring the baby, but enough to remind them both how fragile her situation was. Elias set food in front of her. She ate slowly, eyes distant. "I heard men," she said suddenly. "Days before I collapsed, writers, they were arguing. One of them said my name." Elias froze. "I didn't stop," she went on. "I didn't look back. But I knew." Her fingers tightened around the spoon. "They weren't looking for the horse." The fire popped loudly. "Who are they?" Elias asked. Mara hesitated. "Then my mother's husband. And men he hires." The words settled heavy between them. "They said I owed them," she whispered. "Said the child belonged to them now?" Elias's jaw tightened. He stood and added another log to the fire, his movements controlled, deliberate. "No one owns you," he said. Mara looked at him, then really looked. For the first time, something like belief stirred in her eyes. The storm lasted 2 days. Snow buried the fence line. The world shrank to white and wind and waiting. On the second night, Mara's pain worsened. She cried out once before biting it back, refusing to make a sound. Elias knelt beside her, helpless. He had delivered calves, patched bullet wounds, buried friends. This was different. This was life balanced on the edge of something unforgiving. "You need rest," he said, voice low. "So does the baby," she replied. "But the world doesn't care." She was right. Sometime before dawn, the wind eased. Silence followed, thick and unsettling. Elias woke with Briggs growling softly. He reached for his rifle and moved to the window. Tracks cut through the snow, fresh, leading straight toward the house. Elias felt the old weight settle into his bones. He had hoped the storm would erase her past, bury it deep enough to give her time to hope, he'd learned, was a dangerous thing. He stepped outside, boots crunching loudly, making no attempt to hide himself. The cold bit hard, but it kept his mind clear. 3 riders emerged from the pale distance. Men wrapped in dark coats, faces hidden beneath hats pulled low. Their horses steamed, restless. The one in front raised a hand. "Morning," the man called. His voice carried too easily. Too practiced. Elias stopped several paces away. "This is private land." The man smiled thinly. "We're looking for a woman." Elias didn't move. "She's young," the man continued. "Pregnant. Belongs to us." Behind Elias, the house stood silent. "She doesn't belong to anyone," Elias said. The smile faded. "That's not what her family says." Elias lifted the rifle just enough to make his meaning clear. "You need to leave." For a long moment no one spoke. Snow drifted lazily between them, settling on shoulders and horses. Then the man chuckled. "You know how this ends, old man. You can't hide her forever." "I don't need forever," Elias replied. "Just long enough." The men exchanged looks. One of them spat into the snow. "Burn it if you have to," the leader said quietly. "We'll be back." They turned and rode away, their tracks cutting deep scars across the white ground. Elias stood there long after they vanished. That night, Mara sat by the window, watching the dark. "They'll come back," she said. "Yes." "You don't owe me this," she said. "You don't owe my child anything?" Elias stared into the fire. Flames twisted and shifted, revealing faces that no longer existed. Asterisk, I lost my wife, he said finally. Years ago. Lost the child with her. His voice barely held. I thought the land would be enough. Thought silence would fix what I broke. Mara said nothing. When I found you, he continued, I realized I'd been waiting. I just didn't know for what. Her eyes filled with tears. If staying puts you in danger, she said, I'll go. Elias turned to her, something fierce breaking through the calm he wore like armor. No, he said. You won't. The attack came at dawn, not riders this time. Fire. Asterisk, a bottle shattered against the far fence line, flames leaping greedily across dry wood. Another followed. Smoke curled into the sky, black and angry. Asterisk, Elias moved fast. He shoved Mara toward the back room. Stay down, he ordered. Asterisk, she grabbed his arm. Don't die. Asterisk, he met her gaze. 1,000 unspoken promises passed between them. Asterisk, outside, chaos erupted. Horses screamed. Shots cracked the air. Elias fired back, steady, precise. One man fell. Another fled. The fire spread, consuming the outer barn. Asterisk, pain exploded through Elias's shoulder as a bullet grazed him. He staggered but stayed upright, rage carrying him forward. Asterisk, inside the house. Mara felt the first true contraction hit. Asterisk, she screamed. Asterisk. The sound cut through the smoke and gunfire like a blade. Elias heard it. So did the men. Asterisk. And in that moment, everything changed. The scream did not sound like fear. It sounded like truth breaking open. Elias turned toward the house just as the world erupted again. Another shot cracked the air. Wood splintered near his head. Smoke rolled thick and choking, carrying the bitter smell of burning hay and oil. The barn roof groaned. Flames chewing through old beams that had stood longer than most men lived. Asterisk, inside the house. Mara collapsed to her knees. Asterisk, pain tore through her in waves, sharp and unforgiving. She clawed at the edge of the table, breath breaking apart as another contraction seized her body. The room felt too small, the air too thin. She could hear gunfire outside, hear shouting, but it all felt distant now. Like sound underwater, her world narrowed to one truth. The child was coming. Asterisk. Elias burst through the door moments later. Smoke streaked, blood darkening his sleeve. He slammed the door shut and shoved the table against it, breath ragged, eyes wild. Asterisk. They're not done, he said. Asterisk. Mara couldn't answer. Another wave hit her and she cried out, the sound raw and unstoppable. Elias froze. For the first time since the attack began. He looked afraid, not of death, of failing her. Asterisk. He dropped to his knees beside her, hands shaking as he steadied her shoulders. Listen to me, he said, forcing his voice low, solid. You're not alone. I'm here. Asterisk. Outside, footsteps crunched in the snow. A shadow passed the window. Asterisk. Elias grabbed the revolver, set it within reach, then returned his hands to Mara. Breathe with me, he said. Just like that? She did. Minutes stretched thin, pulled apart by pain and sound and smoke. The house shook as part of the barn collapsed. Sparks rained down outside like dying stars. Asterisk. Then the door shuddered. Asterisk. A heavy blow struck it from the outside. Asterisk. Elias moved, positioning himself between Mara and the door. He raised the revolver, heart pounding so loud he thought it might give him away. The door splintered inward. A man forced his way through, coughing, eyes hard and bright. He raised his gun. Elias fired. The sound was deafening in the small space. The man fell backward, disappearing into the smoke. Asterisk. Silence followed, thick, unnatural. Asterisk. Elias didn't lower the gun until his hands began to shake. Then he turned back to Mara. Her face was slick with sweat, eyes fierce despite the pain. Don't leave, she whispered. Asterisk. I won't, he said. And for the first time in years, he knew it was true. The final moments came fast. Mara screamed, pushed, cried, broke apart, and came back together again. Elias stayed with her, grounding her when the pain threatened to pull her under. He spoke little, but when he did, his voice was steady. anchoring, and then a cry, small, thin, alive, the sound cut through everything. Asterisk, Mara sobbed, collapsing back as Elias lifted the child with trembling hands. A baby girl, red and furious at the world. Fists clenched, lungs full of life. Asterisk, Elias stared down at her, chest tightening until he could barely breathe. She was real. A miracle born in fire and fear and defiance. Asterisk outside. The wind carried away the last of the smoke. The men were gone by morning. One lay dead in the snow. The others had fled sometime in the night, taking their hatred with them. The barn was lost. Part of the fence burned beyond repair. The land bore scars that would take years to fade. Asterisk inside the house. A new sound filled the air, breathing, soft, steady. Asterisk, Elias sat by the window. The baby sleeping against his chest, impossibly small, impossibly warm. Mara lay nearby, exhausted but alive, watching them both with quiet wonder. She needs a name, Mara said softly. Elias looked down at the child. She shifted slightly, fingers curling around his shirt. Hope, he said. Mara smiled through tears. That suits her. Days passed, word reached town. Help came. Not everyone was kind, but enough were. Repairs began. Food arrived. The land slowly returned to itself. Asterisk one afternoon. Elias stood at the edge of the rebuilt fence, watching Mara rock hope beneath the open sky. The wind moved gently now, no longer sharp, no longer threatening. For the first time in years, the land did not feel empty. Elias walked toward them. Hope stirred, opened her eyes, and gripped his finger with surprising strength. Asterisk, he felt it then, not an ending, a beginning. Asterisk. If this story touched you, if you've ever felt abandoned or broken, or alone in a world that felt too wide, remember this. Asterisk. Sometimes family is not where you come from. Asterisk. Sometimes it's who stays when the storm comes. Asterisk. If you carry a story like that, share it below. Let your voice be heard. And never forget, even on the loneliest road, a single act of kindness can change a lifetime.